For more than a century, the cowboy has been one of the most powerful symbols in American history. Hollywood created an image of a fearless man riding across endless deserts, wearing a clean hat, carrying a shining revolver, and winning every duel before sunset. In movies, cowboys were heroes without fear, living exciting lives filled with gunfights, treasure hunts, and adventures. But the real cowboy was very different. Behind the legend was a world of exhaustion, loneliness, danger, and survival. The cowboy was not a king of the Wild West. He was a worker, a man who woke up before sunrise, spent endless hours under the burning sun, and risked his life for a small amount of money. The truth about cowboys was much harder than the stories told on the big screen. In the year 1875, far away from the crowded cities of the East Coast, the American frontier was a vast and unforgiving land. Thousands of miles of open grassland stretched beneath enormous skies. There were no highways, no modern hospitals, and no comfortable homes waiting after a long day of work. The people who lived there had to fight against nature itself. Winter storms could freeze a man within hours. Summer heat could turn rivers into dry lines of dust. A simple injury could become a death sentence. Among those who faced this harsh reality were the cowboys. One of them was a young man named William Carter. He was 19 years old when he first arrived in Texas looking for work. Like many young men of his generation, William had grown up hearing stories about the frontier. He imagined adventure, freedom, and a life where a man could create his own destiny. But the reality he discovered was much different. His first morning on a cattle ranch began before the sun appeared. The cold air covered the fields and the ground was wet with morning frost. While most people were still sleeping, William was already preparing his horse. His hands were shaking because of the cold, but nobody cared. The cattle needed to be moved, and the job had to be done. The older cowboys around him barely spoke. They were not the loud, cheerful characters shown in movies. They were tired men who understood that every day was a battle. Their clothes were dirty from weeks of work. Their boots were damaged from walking through rough land. Their faces were burned by the sun and marked by years of struggle. The cowboy life was not about looking impressive. It was about surviving. A typical cowboy could spend months away from civilization during a cattle drive. Their mission was simple but extremely difficult: move thousands of cattle across hundreds of miles of dangerous territory. They had to guide animals through rivers, mountains, deserts, and storms. During the day, they fought against the heat. During the night, they slept under the open sky, using their saddles as pillows and their blankets as protection against the cold. There were no comfortable beds, no warm houses, no easy meals. Their food was usually basic. Beans, dried meat, bread, and coffee were common. Fresh vegetables were rare. After weeks on the trail, many cowboys became tired of eating the same meals every day. But complaints did not change reality. The cattle still had to move. The image of the cowboy eating in a fancy saloon every night was mostly a Hollywood invention. The real cowboy often spent more time alone in the wilderness than inside towns. One of the biggest myths about cowboys is that they were constantly involved in gunfights. Movies often show every town as a dangerous place where people solved problems with revolvers. But real life was much quieter. Most cowboys were not famous gunslingers. They were ranch workers trying to earn enough money to survive. A gun was usually a tool of protection, not entertainment. The biggest dangers were not always other people. Nature was often the greatest enemy. A sudden storm could separate a cowboy from his group. A horse accident could leave a man injured hundreds of miles from help. A river crossing could become deadly within seconds. Even a simple mistake while handling cattle could cause serious injuries. The frontier demanded discipline. William learned this lesson during his first cattle drive. After several days on the trail, he began to understand why older cowboys rarely smiled. The work was harder than anything he had imagined. One afternoon, while the group was crossing a wide plain, dark clouds appeared in the distance. The experienced cowboys immediately became alert. "Storm coming," one of them said. William looked at the sky and saw only clouds. He did not understand the danger. Within an hour, the peaceful landscape transformed into chaos. Strong winds pushed against the riders. Dust covered the entire area, making it almost impossible to see. Thousands of cattle became frightened and began running in different directions. The cowboys had to act quickly. They rode through the storm, shouting and moving their horses around the herd, trying to prevent the animals from escaping. William held tightly to his saddle while the wind attacked his face. For the first time, he understood something important. Being a cowboy was not about being free. It was about responsibility. Every animal represented money. Every mistake could cost the ranch thousands of dollars. The cowboy was trusted with something valuable, and failure was not an option. That night, after the storm finally passed, William sat beside a small fire. His clothes were covered in mud. His body was exhausted. His hands were full of small cuts. An older cowboy named Jack Miller sat beside him. "You still want this life?" Jack asked. William looked at the endless darkness surrounding them. "I don't know," he answered honestly. Jack smiled. "Good answer." William looked confused. "The ones who think this life is easy don't last long." Those words stayed with him. Over the following months, William changed. The romantic image of the cowboy disappeared, replaced by something more realistic. He learned that courage was not about never feeling fear. Courage was continuing despite fear. He learned that strength was not about winning fights. It was about surviving difficult days when nobody was watching. And he learned that the real cowboy was not the man standing in front of a camera. The real cowboy was the man waking up before dawn, climbing onto a tired horse, and facing another impossible day. But the hardest challenges were still waiting, because the Wild West was changing. The open lands that created the cowboy were slowly disappearing. Railroads were expanding, new towns were growing, fences began dividing the endless plains. The age of the free-ranging cowboy was approaching its final chapter, and soon, the men who once represented freedom would discover that the greatest enemy was not another outlaw. It was time itself. For generations, the cowboy has been remembered as one of the greatest symbols of the American frontier. His image became famous around the world, a mysterious man riding alone through a golden desert, wearing a wide hat, carrying a revolver, and facing danger without fear. Hollywood transformed the cowboy into a legend. He became a symbol of freedom, courage, and adventure. But behind the legendary image was a reality that was far more difficult, far more painful, and far more human. The real cowboy was not a hero from a movie. He was not a man who spent every day fighting villains or walking into a saloon looking for trouble. Most cowboys were ordinary workers who lived extraordinary lives because their jobs demanded incredible endurance. They were men who faced hunger, loneliness, extreme weather, dangerous animals, and exhausting work for months at a time. The Wild West was not a paradise of endless freedom. It was a place where survival depended on preparation, experience, and the ability to continue when everything seemed impossible. In the late 1800s, the American frontier was one of the harshest environments in the world. Thousands of miles of grasslands stretched across the continent. There were huge open spaces where a person could travel for days without seeing a large town. The landscape was beautiful, but beauty could hide danger. A peaceful valley could become a deadly place during a sudden storm. A calm river could become impossible to cross after heavy rain. A hot afternoon in the desert could become a freezing night when the sun disappeared. The people who lived there had to respect nature because nature did not care about human plans. Among these people were the cowboys. In 1875, a 19-year-old young man named William Carter arrived in Texas searching for a new life. Like thousands of others, he had heard stories about the frontier. He imagined wide-open land, adventure, and the chance to become someone important. He believed the cowboy life meant freedom. But his first day on a ranch quickly destroyed that dream. Before the sun rose, while the sky was still dark, William was awakened by the sound of horses moving outside the sleeping area. The older cowboys were already preparing for the day. Nobody shouted. Nobody complained. They simply worked. The temperature was cold, and the ground was covered with moisture from the night air. William struggled to put on his boots because his feet were still tired from the previous day's journey. An older cowboy looked at him and laughed. "First lesson," the man said. "The sun doesn't wait for anyone." William followed the others toward the horses. His own horse was smaller and slower than the animals used by experienced riders. He tried to hide his nervousness, but everyone noticed. The older cowboys had spent years learning how to communicate with their horses. They understood every movement, every sound, every reaction. To them, a horse was not just transportation. It was a partner.